The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as people shuffled into their seats. Lawyers adjusted their ties, reporters flipped open their notepads, and the judge tapped his pen impatiently on the bench. It was just another day in the city court, or so everyone thought. At the center of the case sat Daniel Walker, a hard-working single father. Daniel wasn't wealthy, nor did he hold a powerful position. He was a mechanic by trade, a man who spent his life fixing cars and raising his daughter after his wife passed away years ago. Today, however, Daniel wasn't in his workshop. He was sitting at the defendant's table, facing a lawsuit that threatened to take everything he had. The opposing side was a large corporation, accusing Daniel of damaging one of their expensive vehicles. Their lawyers, dressed in polished suits, smirked confidently as if they had already won. To them, Daniel was small, powerless, and defenseless. But Daniel had something no one expected: his 10-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily was small, with glasses slightly too big for her face, her hair neatly tied into 2 braids. She clutched a folder of papers almost bigger than herself. When the judge asked Daniel where his lawyer was, the entire courtroom froze as Emily stood up. "Your Honor," she said in a clear voice, though her hands trembled, "I'm my father's lawyer." A ripple of laughter filled the courtroom. Some people chuckled outright, others whispered in disbelief. The corporate lawyers exchanged smug grins, certain this was a joke. The judge raised his eyebrows. "A lawyer?" he asked, half smiling. "Little girl, do you even know what that means?" Emily adjusted her glasses. "It means someone who fights for justice, and I'm here to fight for my dad." The courtroom laughed louder, but Emily didn't flinch. She walked straight to the front, carrying her folder with determination. The judge, curious more than annoyed, allowed her to speak. The opposing lawyer leaned back in his chair, smirking. "This should be entertaining," he muttered. Emily opened her folder, revealing pages of notes she had carefully written, along with photographs and receipts. She had spent weeks watching her father prepare, listening to him explain every detail of the case, and asking questions that most adults wouldn't think of. "First," Emily said, her small voice steady, "my dad didn't damage their car. The photos show that the dent was already there before he worked on it." She held up 2 pictures, one taken by her father when the car arrived, another from the corporation's own records. The judge leaned forward, studying the photos. The room quieted. "Second," Emily continued, flipping through her notes, "the corporation said they have no proof the dent existed before. But I found this in their own files." She pulled out a dated inspection sheet signed by the corporation's manager. The lawyer on the opposing side suddenly shifted uncomfortably. The laughter that had filled the courtroom minutes ago had vanished. Now, everyone stared at the little girl who spoke with the composure of someone far older. Daniel sat silently, his eyes wet with pride. He had tried to tell Emily she didn't need to get involved, that the case was too complicated for her. But she had insisted. She knew how much this meant to him, how unfair the accusation was, and she refused to let her father stand alone. The judge cleared his throat. "Young lady, continue." Emily nodded. She flipped to her last page. "My father has worked honestly for years. He takes pictures of every car before and after fixing it. He keeps receipts. He never lies, because he taught me that truth is stronger than fear." She looked directly at the judge, her voice trembling but strong. "I'm not a real lawyer, Your Honor. I'm just his daughter. But if being a lawyer means standing up for someone you love, then I am my father's lawyer." The courtroom fell silent. No one laughed this time. Even the opposing lawyers avoided eye contact, their smugness gone. The judge leaned back, deeply moved. For a moment, the formality of the courtroom dissolved, replaced by the raw sincerity of a child defending her father. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, broken only by the sound of papers shuffling as Emily closed her folder. She looked so small standing there, yet her words had carried more weight than any lawyer's polished arguments. The judge cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "Well," he said slowly, "that was unexpected." He turned to the corporate lawyer. "Do you have anything to say in response?" The opposing lawyer, a tall man with slicked back hair, stood up with a forced smile. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A child cannot represent her father in court. Surely, we cannot entertain this performance. But his voice lacked confidence. Emily's evidence had been solid, her delivery honest, and the judge had clearly been moved. Emily didn't back down. She held the inspection sheet tightly in her hands. "The truth doesn't need to be old enough, sir," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It just needs to be real." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even the audience members, who had laughed at her before, now leaned forward, captivated. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. "Mr. Carson," he said to the corporate lawyer, "the evidence she presented, these photographs and this inspection sheet, do you deny their authenticity?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. We'll need to review those documents in detail." The judge frowned. "You had them in your files. Why did this child find them, and you did not?" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The corporation's case, once thought unbeatable, was unraveling at the hands of a 10-year-old girl with braids and oversized glasses. Daniel, sitting at the table, lowered his head and whispered, "That's my girl." His eyes filled with tears he could no longer hold back. Emily, meanwhile, stood tall. For a moment, the nervous child disappeared, and in her place stood a voice of courage and truth. The judge leaned forward. "Emily, do you have anything else to say before I make my decision?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom grew silent again. "My dad has always told me that no matter how hard life gets, you don't give up. He taught me that people can try to scare you, but the truth is stronger than fear. Today, they wanted to scare him. But I won't let anyone scare my dad. Because he's not just my father, he's my hero." Her voice cracked at the last word, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked at the judge with wide, determined eyes. The judge exhaled deeply. "Emily, you are not a licensed attorney, but I have to say, you've presented this case with more honesty and clarity than many I've seen in this court." He turned to the opposing lawyers. "Given the evidence presented and the clear misconduct in withholding documents, I have no choice but to dismiss this case." The gavel struck. Bang! The case was over. For a split second, the courtroom was silent. Then applause broke out from the back rows, spreading quickly until nearly everyone was clapping. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads, already sensing the headline of the day: "Little girl defends father in court and wins." The corporate lawyers gathered their files in silence, their faces pale and defeated. Their arrogance had been destroyed by the one person they never took seriously. Daniel rushed to his daughter, kneeling down and pulling her into his arms. "Emily, you saved me," he whispered, his voice shaking. She hugged him tightly. "I told you, Daddy. I'm your lawyer." The judge, who had tried to keep his composure, couldn't help but smile warmly. "Miss Emily, while you may not be a real lawyer yet, I have no doubt that someday you will be one of the best." Emily's cheeks flushed, and she buried her face in her father's shoulder, embarrassed by the attention but proud all the same. As they walked out of the courthouse together, Daniel held his daughter's hand tightly, no longer just a father protecting his child, but a man who had been saved by her courage. Outside, reporters swarmed them with microphones and cameras. One asked Emily, how did you know what to say in there?" Emily adjusted her glasses and replied softly, "I just told the truth. And I believed in my dad." The story spread like wildfire, inspiring people far beyond that small courtroom. Strangers wrote letters to Emily, thanking her for reminding them that courage doesn't depend on age, size, or status. It depends on love and truth. And from that day forward, whenever anyone asked Daniel about the hardest day of his life, he would smile and answer, "The day my daughter became my lawyer."